We're going to transition into some things to just review and consider. This is really the first official year of everyone going to STAAR online testing. So we want to give you some thought process to review because it's a different year, right? And so we'll start with some big picture items that could be part of your checklist. And if not, this is a great way to start thinking about what is our checklist now. So we have a couple of different things that we like to talk about, and we've said a lot of these at multiple different webinars as well, but making sure that students do have those supports in place when they're online testing. That is the major reason for going to online testing with the state of Texas. So let's make sure our kids get those supports. And then of course, the next one is, are they using them? If we have enabled them for them, are they taking the time to click the buttons and utilize them? So we do have those options for you to not only run a report on what's enabled, but to also run usage reports and see who's using them. Probably the biggest one that I've heard feedback from as I go out to districts is, do students understand how to use these different accessibility tools? There are a variety for different tests, and there are a variety of different tools in online testing. So do they know when and how to use these? And a lot of times teachers are kind of assuming that they do know, but we want to make sure that we take the time to really say, when should you use a highlighter? How does a highlighter help you? And giving students that time to really reflect on how these tools are there to help them throughout the assessment to showcase their learning. We also always talk about, in Aware, are you making sure that you are creating those reports to monitor students who are receiving intervention, but also any other different realm that you want to monitor students for multiple different purposes, how they performed last year, they're in intervention, they're high performing, you name it. Are you making sure that you're monitoring those kids over time and how they are doing? You can also, as a new piece, we keep talking about the new things, but you can create a data view to analyze the assessments you've given over time by the new item types. This is incredibly informative because then you can see, wow, drag and drop is a real problem. We should really go back and review drag and drop with our students, and it may not even readily be a content issue. We see that they're struggling with this question type in general. So those are just some overarching pieces that we're going to go more into detail about as we go through the slides and talk about. So the first piece, again, was that online testing supports. And so there is just an automatic report that you can run in the system to see exactly what students have enabled each of these supports and what it looks like. And of course, you can run those usage reports, but just remembering, have we turned it on? How often have we turned on these student supports and how often are they using them? You'll also notice too at the bottom of each one of these slides, there's a little question mark and then there's a link. So after we are done with the presentation and we send you the video, you'll also get a copy of the presentation so that you can go through, and these are linked to our online help guides, which walk you through each of the processes that we're talking about in these slides. Okay, as I keep going, revisiting some of those online testing supports. So what are we turning on at the test level and what are we turning on at the student level? This is always a good time to start having that conversation. About semester, depending on your grade level, we may not turn on as many test level supports. We may move into student specific supports. But again, making sure, are we keeping on question randomization? Are we keeping on the online dictionary? Things of that nature are great to have conversations about right now as we're getting to the second half of the school year and revisiting those processes. So here are those student accessibility tools that are available for all students when they log in and take an online assessment. So again, making sure that students understand what each of these tools does for them to showcase their learning. I love that my daughter comes home and shows me exactly how she uses each one of these tools and how it helps her to be more successful on the assessment. Her teacher's walking her through this practice all the time. So it's great to see those pieces and how they play out. But having this conversation of how does the notepad tool help you? How does it help express your evidence of this being the correct answer or whatever the case may be? And of course, if you haven't already seen our new Scratchpad tool, that went live just a while ago, I believe just a few weeks ago. So now you can turn on the Scratchpad tool at the test level. So you get to decide what test you want this tool enabled. And then as you can kind of see in the quick video, students can use either the papered line graph, they can do a blank screen, they can change their colors. And what I like about it the most is that you can drag the window over the actual content of the assessment, which is what's happening here, so that students can see the actual numbers to write them down in order to help support them finding the answers. So if you haven't checked out our Scratchpad tool, again, be sure you go look at that. And if that's something you really want to start using, because you know students will see this on Cambium, then we would definitely recommend that you start turning that on now. Okay, so we went over those major pieces. And so I want to hear back from you, let you process through that. What part of the checklist do you plan to utilize in your district? So is it you're going to run those reports on student support usage? Are you going to verify that students really do have an understanding of those accessibility tools? Are you going to run some monitor group reports, create those data views, by new question types, or are you just so excited that you're just going to do it all? So you can tell us, are you A, B, C, D? Are you E all the way? Are you laughing because you already do these things? Oh, I see lots of E's. So all of my people are here today. I love it. If not, grab one that's useful that you can take away and is beneficial for you. It's just great to kind of have a reminder of what can we be looking at in this new fun online testing world.
And Emily, as those responses continue coming in, we do have one question in the Q&A, and since this is a new tool, I think it would be beneficial to hear your response out loud. So this question is, will teachers have access to see the Scratchpad that students use?
So right now they do not have access to view the Scratchpad. That's a great question. We talked about that feature as well. We are hoping that in the future, if you give us feedback that that is absolutely something you want them to be able to see the Scratchpad like they can the Notepad tool, let us know. We love hearing back from you and those feature requests. Believe it or not, I read those. I do read them all and put them in folders in my email. So we take time to make sure we strategize those based on your feedback. So if that's something you find valuable, please let us know that. Right now, the student can, however, keep the Scratchpad tool and everything they've written for the entirety of the test. We are very excited about that. So unlike Cambium, if they move from question to question, they don't lose their notes, which could be very valuable when they go back in and check their answers. They get it for the longevity of the test. So we are excited about that, and they don't lose their notes. But after they submit the test, then all of that is no longer available to them. That was a great question. It's nice to hear that you would like that. Okay, so we're going to transition just a little bit and talk about Aware and lead4ward and some data analysis pieces. So we talked about online testing. Now let's really get into the weeds of what's helpful right now for data analysis. So again, we're going to kind of start with some big picture things. So at this time of the year, when I was at a school district, I was making sure that we ran some growth reports over time. It's beautiful that now you can look at those by performance level, and you can really make sure that students are maintaining their performance level. So that's a great way to start looking at data. The good old faithful is looking at learning standards over time. We're in intervention time. So what skills do students need support with? Can really hone in on that and see learning standards over time. Intervention monitoring, which we already mentioned before. The leadership report card is another great tool that you can go in and run and make sure that you're lined up. Does STAAR last year look similar to how our local assessments are looking this year? What are some differences? And you can start pulling those out with that report. It's a great thing to do right now. Another one is just reviewing that piece of how do your campuses count toward accountability? And what I mean by that is if you are a performance campus, do you know that? We are predominantly domain 1, or are we a growth campus and we're predominantly domain 2? Making sure that that is very well known, because that's how you want to focus a lot of your data analysis. You don't want to necessarily miss elements, but make sure that those conversations are targeted. As we go over and talk about how do you share all of this information with everybody, it's not always helpful if you're the person in your district running all this data and then you're running to the printer, right? Don't go to the printer. You can share your data views, you can save them, you can create templates. And of course, our favorite option is making sure that teacher editing is turned on. You get a much deeper level of ownership when the teacher has created that report themselves and they look at that time overview of all of these different trends. So again, if you're not as familiar with each one of these different options within Aware, we have all the different online help guides at the bottom to help you with each of these. So let's continue and talk about data views and look at this just briefly. Data views are very powerful in that you can grab and customize exactly what you see within Aware. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with this element of it. I'm showing you the little video right here of Aware Beta. I'm strategically doing that as well because you have some extended options in Aware Beta that you can star or you can favorite your views under configuration. So no longer are you having to recreate a view, you favorite it. And then you go add multiple assessments to that view and extend it. So really working within Aware Beta saves you time. It will shave off the amount of clicks that you're doing and creates that level of simplicity. So making sure that you take that transition into looking at what it looks like within Aware Beta. And again, that teacher editing, making sure that's turned on at your campuses. And your teachers have access to do this. So do they know how to create a data view and save it themselves? Because again, they can just add the next assessment to that data view and see it over time. So making sure that your teachers know that they have this, and if that's something they're ready to take ownership of, that they can absolutely do. There are good old faithful reports that we were talking about that you can go run. I put little stars next to some of my favorite ones within here. And so just a good time of year that your teachers that are saying, I can barely keep my head above water, that's reasonable. You can go run these reports that are auto-generated for you. You don't have to select a lot of options. You don't have to select fields or be highly specialized in Aware. You can simply go run a report and you can get a lot of valuable information within these reports that are already built in. And again, here's that student support usage that we really like to talk about, making sure that you have verified if students have content clarification. Have they used their content clarifiers? If so, how many times have they clicked on them? If they have the ability to have spelling assistance, we even give you the amount of times they have right-clicked on a word to receive spelling assistance. If they have text-to-speech, how many times have they actually clicked on that little audio button in order to hear it? So we give you that level of data analysis that corresponds with that student support. Okay, I feel like we are moving fast. Very good. Okay, so we already talked about several other things related to data analysis. So what methods do you use for sharing data analysis within your district? So you can tell us, do teachers create their own data? Do instructional coaches or admin make data views for them, or administrators pulling the data for teachers? Or is all data created and shared in Aware? Are you just all gung-ho? So what does that look like in your district? Who's doing some of that owning of the data and sharing it? All right, I see some B's, those instructional coaches, those admin. And some are D's all the way. I like it. You're not tearing down trees using paper. You're sharing everything in Aware. It's a team effort. Oh, I like moving from B to A. You have a plan. I like it. Beautiful. These are great things to think about and start transitioning. As you get a little deeper in the program every year, you can start making these transitions and start moving to a place where, hey, teachers own their data, and then we share some major views and we have systems in place. So that is outstanding. Love hearing that. Okay, you now are done hearing from me for a little bit, and I'm going to hand it over to Leanne, and she's going to really talk to you about what's new with accountability. We know that it's changing and some of it's still in a little bit of preliminary stages, but she's going to talk to you about where we are and what things have changed.
All right. Thank you, Emily and Tara, for letting me join you guys today and share a little bit about what we know as of today, February the 8th, in regards to accountability. So again, we are still kind of in that preliminary phase. We really will not know any final answers until late this summer, but we have had a series of updates. So as of today, we're going to give you the latest and greatest of where things stand. So the first thing I want to just kind of point out and highlight is just the big overview of our accountability system. We use this quick look, if you will, to kind of help give a visual of what makes up or comprises our accountability system. So when we spotlight the first couple of rows of this quick look, it's going to break down the two different methodologies. So along the top, we have our methodology for elementary middle school. And then for our 2023 accountability system, the high schools will follow the bottom row. And so the big piece to this image, if you will, is to highlight and show you that our accountability system as a whole really is staying intact, as far as we still have the 3 different domains. We still will have the 4 different areas that are being evaluated. And most importantly, our system is still going to be based on what you do best. So if you do growth or if you do performance best, that becomes 70% of your overall rating, and the remaining 30% is your domain 3. Our system is still, like I just said, a strengths-based system. So we like to kind of give you the what if. What if we said growth is what we did best? And so you can take a look. On the left-hand side is our elementary middle schools, right-hand side is high schools. And so we say if we did growth best, that becomes 70% of our pie. And then when we add that remaining 30%, we then see that elementary and middle schools really have the opportunity to get 85% of their overall rating from growth. This has been the case for the last 5 years, and that's going to continue to be the case for this 2023 school year. So we are excited that growth is still going to continue to play a large part and possibility. Included in growth this year is going to be a few extra tests. So in the past, we have only included reading grades 4 through 8 and English 2. This year, we're going to be including reading grades 4 through English 2. So going to add some additional tests to our growth scores this year. Kind of one of the big overarching changes this year is going to be district ratings. So in the past, districts used the same methodologies as high schools, but there's going to be a change this year to how districts will receive that rating. So what has been proposed is the use of a proportional weighting system. The way this will be done is a district will go and calculate their enrollment in grades 3 through 12, and each individual campus will also calculate that enrollment in grades 3 through 12. Once we have a campus total, we're going to divide how many kids were in grades 3 through 12 by that overall district enrollment of grades 3 through 12. And that is going to give us a proportional weighting or an amount of points that are going to be contributed to a district's overall rating. So you can see on the example here, this particular district had 5 campuses. Campus 2 most likely is a high school just based on enrollment numbers. So that particular campus, 41% of its rating would be attributed to the overall district rating. So this is a little bit of a change from what we have seen in the past, but it should give us a kind of a clear picture, if you will, on how a district is doing as a whole. This process has to be repeated for each individual domain. So a district would have to, if they were calculating this score, they would have to do that process 4 different times to get the overall rating. But districts will still follow the same process as a campus on whichever one of the domains or areas we do best. That will become 70% of the district's overall rating, and then the remaining 30% will be that domain 3. So the district still is also looking at a best of. It's a strengths-based system. The next change we see, it kind of is a significant change for us, is in the area of CCMR, so career, college, military readiness. We see that CCMR come up in both domains 1 and 2B, as well as in domain 3. So we do see it in several areas. But for us, when we take a look at CCMR, what we're considering this year is that how we calculate CCMR is not really going to change. There's some minimal change in the certifications that are being considered. But what we're going to see a bigger change in is in the scaling of CCMR. And so what is taking place is we are reweighting that. We've typically seen that campuses who scored about a 60 raw score in CCMR, they would have gotten an A in that area. And beginning this year, it's going to take about an 88 to get that same A. So it's a significant change in the overall scaling of CCMR. The list of IBCs we expected it to come into play this year, but the TEA has recently announced that we'll hold off another year on that. So what we're seeing again here is just an example as for our change in scaling. So in this particular example, you'll see that there is a high school who received, if you believe it's a 51, sorry, waiting for, there we go. So our example, so a high school in 2022, if they had scored a 51 for CCMR, it was equivalent to an 82, a B. This year, in 2023, that same 51 would scale to a 60. So as you can see, it's a pretty significant change there. We have kind of given you a quick visual to see that breakdown between the last 4 years to this year to see scaling methodologies there. But this is a significant change for our high school and district to take a look at. Next on the list, as far as proposed changes, is our domain 3, our closing the gaps. While the overall components of our domain 3, the pieces that we are looking at, these are not going to change. We are still going to see that our elementary and middle school on the left-hand side, our high school on the right-hand side, The components are exactly the same as they have been, and how much they are attributing to your domain 3 is still the same as well. So this part of our domain 3 is remaining exactly the same. You can take a look, elementary, middle school, the largest piece of that being your academic growth. High school, the largest piece being your academic achievement. So the percentage of students who score at that meets grade level or above in both that reading and math test. Elementary, middle school academic achievement is the next on the list for you. High schools, we see our federal CCMR piece. Elementary, middle school have the STAAR performance. So that is your domain 1 score. So however you did in domain 1, your overall STAAR performance, that comes back again in domain 3, whereas high schools will take a look at their federal graduation rate. And then both columns have that EL proficiency at the end, also known as TELPAS. The biggest change to domain 3 is going to be in the areas of our interim targets. So the interim targets are going to change this year based off of some research, some data. And what we're going to see is that every one of our campus types, so elementary, middle school, high school, you will each have your own set of targets beginning this year. We had been operating where everybody, no matter what campus type, were following the same target, but beginning this year, you will have separate targets for each campus type. The other significant change is that we are moving from a minimum size criteria of 25 tests in order to populate the data. We are now moving that down to 10. So that will be a significant change if you are in a small school district, small campus. Some of our different student groups may have not had data populated in the past, but may see those this year. The other area of change is going to move to what we call a gradated outcome. So in the past, when you were trying to reach the targets, if you met the target, you got a yes. If you didn't meet the target, you got a no. And beginning in this 23 accountability cycle, we are now going to see a 0 to 4. And you can see on your screen the different ways those targets are met. But it's going to, instead of just being a yes-no system, now move to a 0 to 4 point system. We'll see that a lot of people who may have got a 100 in your domain 3 in years past, that may look a little bit different this year based on these long-term targets. And then the final area that we're going to see some change is we are going to move from looking at all of our race and ethnicities to just looking at the 2 lowest ones based on the prior year assessment data. And then we're going to take a look at what is going to be called a super group or a high focus group, which is going to be made up of our economically disadvantaged students, our special ed students, our EB or EL students, and then highly mobile. Highly mobile will be a new terminology for this domain 3, but it encompasses our homeless, migrant, and foster students. And so in years prior, if you had a student who was economically disadvantaged, EB, and special ed, they may have what we would say count for us 3 times. Under this new super group or high focus group, that student will only count once because it is one shared column. All these groups fall under the column. As far as identifying your 2 lowest race and ethnicities, again, we're going to use our 2022 assessment data to determine what that is. And the way we calculate this is by taking a look at just the number of students who met the grade level or above. So in that academic achievement section, we're going to sum all the numerators in that student group for both RLA and math. And then we're going to divide that by the sum of the denominators. So how many students were tested in RLA and math. That will give you a percentage, and whichever of the two student groups that have the lowest percentage, those will be the groups that are evaluated for 2023. And you can see on the screen a little more detailed step-by-step instruction of how that works. But again, it's the number of kids that met grade level compared to the ones that took the test. And if you are an Accountability Connect member, we have a tool to help you calculate this data as well.
Leanne, before you move on, can you expand on that just a bit? We do have a question in the Q&A that states, does a spreadsheet exist to help capture data elements and calculate a best guess on accountability?
If you have the Accountability Connect membership, we do have a template that will help you calculate your two lowest race and ethnicities. All of the resources we provide are meant to be as a tool. We don't really provide projections on your accountability, but it does provide a tool to help you monitor these groups. And Emily is going to expand some more on how you can do that in just a little bit.
Thank you.
The final main area we are going to see some change in the 23 accountability system is in our academic growth. And I will say we are very excited about these changes. So you can see on your screen that the first piece that is going to change is we are going to move from what has been known as kind of a 4x4 matrix, or our did not meet, our approaches, our meets, and our masters, and we are going to expand that to a 6x6 matrix. So we are going to be separating those low does not meet and our low and high approaches, and so that gives us a 6x6 matrix. The way we calculate academic growth is to compare how a student did on the 2022 assessment to the 2023 assessment. And each one of these boxes you can see represents the number of students who scored at that level. Each box gives us a point value. So any of the red boxes that you see, these students are going to earn 0 points for us because these students went backwards from 2022 to 2023. These are what we call performance droppers. The blue boxes, these students are going to be worth a ½ point each. They maintain in the same performance level, but they may have dropped down from a higher level to a lower level in the school year. And so we only will generate a ½ point, but it's still positive growth points being attributed. And then the last group of kids, the kids in green boxes, these are the students who have maintained or improved upon their scores, and so they will earn a full growth credit for us. And so to calculate our growth, we're going to call this annual growth this year. So to calculate our annual growth, you're going to add all of the points together and you divide by the number of tests that were given. So in this instance, there were 109 points. Divided by the 172 tests, it gives us an annual growth score of a 63. The second step to our growth piece to really kind of take a look at, and before I jump into that, I forgot to mention, really we like to give you the idea of if you are looking at 63, that is a 63 is about 63% of your kids that made growth for 1 year's worth of instruction. And so I'm going to ask a question in just a little bit about what percentage you think that should be. Hope I kind of give you a heads up of what that's going to answer in just a little bit. But annual growth is calculating how many kids made growth for a year's worth of instruction. The second component to our academic growth calculation this year is going to be our House Bill 4545 performance. This is new for us in our accountability system. And so to calculate this House Bill 4545 summary, what TEA is going to do is they're going to use this annual growth chart that we just took a look at, and they're going to focus on just those first 2 rows, the students who did not meet performance on the assessment. And so when we focus just those 2 rows, you're going to see that in those first 4 boxes, there are 41 students represented there who failed the test last year and also failed the test this year. Therefore, we're going to get 0 points from those students in our House Bill 4545 score. If you take a look to the right, so all those approaches, our meets and our masters, all the students that we see there are 28 of them. Each of those students are going to generate an additional point for us for House Bill 4545. And so when we calculate our score here, you see 28 students divided by the 69 that were total in the did not meet, and you get a House Bill 4545 score of a 41. Now, this score is really important for a campus. This gives you an idea as a campus principal, campus intervention, how well our services are working at the campus level. Okay, TEA does plan to report this separate from our growth score so that we can take a look and see how we are doing in this area. Next, TEA will take our annual growth score and our House Bill 4545 summary and combine those together in order to give us our academic growth score. So the way this works, we take those 109 points that we got from the our annual growth, and then we're going to add our 4545 points. So 4545 is going to be equivalent to a 1/4 of our total. So we're going to multiply whatever points we get by 0.25. So those 28 points, when we multiply by 0.25, a 1/4 of them, we get 7 additional points. These are what we're going to call our icing on the cake points. Okay, so when we sum 109 plus those 7, we now have a point total of 116. We're going to continue to divide by that 172. And so our overall academic growth score is a 67. Give you another just kind of visual here. Oh, I think the slide duplicated. Give you another visual here. We do like to give you as many kind of visuals as we can to help drive home the point. So for our academic growth, if we think about this in terms of a cake, our annual growth is going to be the actual cake. How we do on growth from last year to this year, that is the cake. And then everything that we do for House Bill 4545, that's going to be icing on the cake. It can't hurt us. It is only meant to help us. And so we are excited about that because there were some other proposals that were not in our favor, but this is going to truly be a huge benefit to campuses and all that you're already doing with that House Bill 4545. And so what is the goal? What is our annual, our goal that we're striving for? And you'll see that that goal is going to be an 85. And if you've been around with lead4ward for the last few years, this has been the goal we've been reaching for this whole time. And so fortunately, it's going to continue to be the same. That is what it takes to get an A in academic growth. Yes, somebody wrote drive for 85. Exactly right. Okay, so kind of take a break, do a little question for you. We're going to make this a STAAR 2.0 question. So the percentage of students who should make 1 year's worth of growth for 1 year's worth of instruction is what? And this is a drop-down box, right? So which one of these do you feel like a should happen? You know, what percent of our kids should make annual growth, and why? We justify that. So drop that into chat. Which one of those do you think it should be, and why? 100%, absolutely. That is certainly our goal. Absolutely, love it. 85 hits that goal for 85, our drive for 85 to get that A. Absolutely, no performance droppers. You guys are some lead forward experts. Love it. Love it, love it. So just a summary of our changes. Go through those real quick. So in our chart here, you can see each of the different areas. So in STAAR performance, how we calculate STAAR performance, there are no changes. Scaling for STAAR performance, again, we are going to see that there are none for the year. And so that's great news. In regards to CCMR, there are some minor changes in calculations based on those certifications, industry-based certifications, but there is some humongous change to that scaling that we're going to see. Our graduation rate, there's really no changes to the calculation and some very minor changes to the scaling. Relative performance, we're not going to see, this is that domain 2B, we're not going to see any change for elementary, middle school. There's some minor change in how high school is going to work because of CCMR, but the scaling, the scoring also really doesn't change either. Very minor at high school. And then academic growth, we do see that new calculation with the addition of 45, but it is a positive, it's a good thing. It's meant to help you and boost you in that area. And as far as scaling and scoring, it's very minor. The bulk of the change we see is going to happen in that domain 3. So how it is being calculated is going to be significantly reconfigured. As far as scaling and scoring, that really is going to also be driven by that reconfiguration. So domain 3 is also going to see a big change. So district ratings, CCMR, growth, and domain 3 are our big areas of change this year. Just want to kind of give a shout out for you. If you want to learn more about our 2023 accountability system and the updates, we are going to have our second annual accountability symposium this year at the Weston Domain in Austin. There is a link for you if you would like to register and join us. That will be on March the 27th. We would love to have you there with us. My colleague John and I will be there, as well as Heather Smalley from TEA. So we hope to see you there and be able to give you some additional information at that time.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Leanne. That was so very helpful to get that quick review and to see it all broken down that way. So we're going to quickly transition into just aware and accountability. So how do these two tools work together for you, and how can they help you with the systems that you have in aware? So let's go ahead and roll through some of these. Again, giving you kind of that big picture outline. In aware, you can easily determine your campus size in the system. So if you're already thinking, oh goodness, so size is going to matter for accountability now, then you can easily do that in aware. You can easily determine your student populations as well that will count toward domain 3. So who are those predominant two? Which campuses are more of that growth versus performance? You can figure that out in aware as well. You can set up your performance levels to monitor these student growth levels that are projected now. You can also fully utilize monitor groups. So if you want more of that transparency for that CCMR change, so you really have some extra accountability measures, you can do monitor groups in the system that will help with that as well. And again, that House Bill 4545 group of students is now very important. So we've done webinar series over House Bill 4545 and aware, making sure that you do have those monitor groups, because monitoring those kids over time to see which ones are going to count toward extra points for you would be very important moving forward. So I just gave you a quick little screenshot of a data view that's easy to create in the system. I aggregated campus data from the year before for their different subject areas, and I can easily see what area that campus counted for. So were they more of a growth campus or were they more of a performance campus, just based on how I aggregated the data? I can also see the total students that were tested before. So I kind of get an idea, and I get an idea of my student groups as well. So that's one data view that's going to give you all of that information at your fingertips. The other piece that I briefly mentioned was your performance levels. So again, within our system, we have 5 different performance levels. So you saw in those charts, you could break down high does not meet grade level, low approaches, high approaches, meets and masters. Those are just how I wrote it out, so that you're really able to target each one of these groups over time. So again, we do want to add a level of caution to this. I would not suggest you necessarily go do this for the current school year, just because you would have to make sure that you rescore all of your assessments, and you may not want to do that. But you could easily talk about, do we want to put this in place for next year for reading and math assessment, so that we do get a clear picture of where these students are going within these performance levels, that being the big deal as far as how they calculate toward your growth score. Okay, again, those student monitor groups, you easily see how to create those groups when you filter a data view, and it will automatically tell you, do you want to go ahead and create a monitor group for these students? If not, you can upload the data as being the student ID number and create them automatically. There are multiple different ways to create these monitor groups, but they make it so much easier to really look in detail at how these groups of students are performing over time. If, again, you want to have additional documentation for these students, because we mentioned this could be a CCMR support, then maybe you want to make sure that you create a form in the system. We have MTSS right here for intervention and for other student needs as well, but you could make sure that we have a form, we assign it to a group of students, and then we're able to monitor and track those students as well. So we have multiple solutions that you can do within Aware to really hone in on these students, and then write out, what is the plan? What are we doing? And what does this look like over time? All right, finally, if you missed, we did do some of those series on House Bill 4545 that you can go back and watch. If you want to start creating these groups, we covered in great detail how you can create them and monitor them over time.